heading into the West Coast swing, this has just not been a good look for the Red Sox. What is their biggest need heading into the trade deadline, and will they actually make a move after acquiring Drew Pomeranz a couple of weeks ago?
Well, Dave Dombrowski has never not been bold. He certainly acted quicker than a lot of teams did this year, both with the Ziegler and with the Pomeranz acquisitions. I don't know if they're going to make another big one. We just heard yesterday, I think it was last night, I saw a rumor that they've been linked at least to the Brewers and Jonathan LaCroix. That would be interesting. They have been also talked about as being involved in maybe Andrew Cashner talks still. Whether Cashner would be a relief pitcher, a swingman, or a starter. He's mostly been a starter, although I think he'd be an ideal setup guy given the way he starts games strong and then falters the second, third time through the order. I've never not been surprised by Dombrowski. I think he has got the sort of MO where he will make an unpredictable kind of deal. The best player available, whether or not he has a place for him, he'll figure it out. So I wouldn't say that they're done yet.
Now, a lot of people in Red Sox Nation up here will overvalue the prospects, but it seems like Yoan Moncada and Andrew Benintendi, at least seeing what they've been doing in Double-A, they seem like the real deal. Do you feel like Dombrowski, especially with his history out in Detroit, would be willing to deal one or both if the right deal does arise?
I don't think so. I know that's the thing people fear, given how he has moved boldly in the past, but it was very rare that the Tigers, when he was running them, got burnt as far as prospects go. A lot of that being because the minor league system wasn't very deep for most of the time he was wheeling and dealing there. I think that Dombrowski, look, he's not an idiot, and I think only an idiot would think that someone like Moncada would be someone that you trade for a rental, for a veteran, for a playoff push. He's a very different kind of prospect. Almost everyone you talk to say that he's a future centerpiece of the lineup. I think Dombrowski has a good history of not really getting rid of the top dudes. I can't even think of someone who's been really terribly burned on, at least right before the end there. Maybe something in that David Price deal wasn't the best thing in the world for him. But, I think he's a competent guy to run the trade ship, and that those two are certainly going to be safe.
Now, if the Red Sox don't make a move, do you still feel like that they, with Craig Kimbrell coming back and with them getting a little healthier down the stretch, that this is still a playoff team and a team that could contend for the World Series?
I do. And, mostly because I don't think either Toronto or Baltimore, who they're looking up at the standings at right now, are perfect teams by any stretch of the imagination. Both of them have some serious offensive thunder capability. We know that. Both of them have some starting pitching depth problems at times. And, they're just as capable of going on a kind of funk that we're seeing the Red Sox on right now. So I said, at the beginning of the year, whichever team addresses its starting pitching problems the most decisively is the team that's going to probably prevail in the American League East. And nothing's really changed my mind about that.
We're talking with Craig Calcaterra here of NBC Sports Hardball Talk. Now, there's been some speculation about some big-time aces. I know Chris Archer had been rumored around, Matt Moore, and then, of course, Chris Sale after the whole Edward Scissorhands ordeal with the jerseys from this last week. Who's the biggest name, at least in terms of starting pitchers, that you think will actually be dealt before the 4 p.m. deadline on Monday?
I think Chris Sale. And it's not just because of the jersey cutting up things. He's made it very clear that he'd welcome a trade. In the wake of the jersey thing, he gave an interview earlier this week, sort of throwing his manager under the bus, saying he didn't want to win. In spring training, he was throwing Kenny Williams, the team's president, under the bus. He's a guy that probably could use a change of scenery. That the White Sox have the rare opportunity to do something special with, because most of the time when you get a guy who's becoming a head case, he's not playing well. Well, Chris Sale's still pitching very well. He's still one of the best pitchers in baseball. Parting ways with him while being able to get a nice package of prospects back would be a very good thing. Plus, they have the cover of, hey, look, he wasn't happy here, I have to go. So I think Sale by far will be the biggest name to go. Chris Archer certainly having a down year, but his talent is undeniable. I wouldn't be shocked to see him. Everybody thinks he's going to be a Los Angeles Dodger. That seems like a fairly good bet, actually. So those two, I think, would be the biggest two. And then you've got a bunch of second-tier names like Cashner, and I still haven't ruled out the Braves trading Julio Teheran, but that seems a little less likely now than it did maybe a week ago.
Well, you touched on Chris Sale, and you have a nice article on hardballtalk.com about Basically, the comparison of Chris Sale being a competitor, quote unquote, compared to some of his other peers or even just other sports athletes, if they had done the same thing, you used Kevin Durant and said he probably wouldn't be viewed as a competitor. Is that kind of the thing about today's day and age where he goes out there and he's viewed as just trying to help his team win as opposed to someone else who probably would get crucified out there in the sports media?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think, look, if Cam Newton did something like Sale did, what do you think people would say about him? They got mad at him just for the way he celebrated a touchdown. I think there is a huge double standard based on, sometimes it's based on race. I'm not gonna shy away from that. I think there's a huge part of that. But I think what is underlying that is less racism than it is how friendly you are with reporters. If you have good relationships with the reporters who cover your team, or your friends in the clubhouse, like Chris Sale has friends in the clubhouse who have great relationships with reporters, they're willing to see the human side of your motivations more than just your behavior. They'll talk to you more. They'll talk to you longer. They'll try to understand you more. If there's a language barrier, if there's someone that you can't just sit and chat with for 20 minutes, all you see is the behavior. You don't see the motivation and you don't see the human side. So someone like Chris Sale is going to get a lot more sympathetic treatment, I think, when an incident like this happens than someone who merely gives a quote to the media and then doesn't have that relationship. It's a human thing, but it definitely results in a double standard of treatment.
Hall of Fame weekend was last weekend, and it gets a lot of Red Sox fans going and thinking about whether David Ortiz will be in there in around 5.5 years. How long, if at all, does David Ortiz have to wait to get into Cooperstown, do you think?
My hope is certainly that he doesn't have to wait at all, that he'll be a first-time inductee when he's first eligible. I also am beginning to suspect that will be the case. He obviously has two huge things that historically have derailed Hall of Fame cases, at least for a while. One, he's a DH. DHs have very rarely gotten the same level of support that non-DHs have gotten. I think that's going to change a little bit. We've already seen a couple guys like Paul Molitor, Frank Thomas, who spent a lot of time at DH. I think eventually people will realize that the DH has been around, by the time he's eligible, 50 years, and hopefully will be mainstream. And then obviously, of course, he had some performance-enhancing drug associations many, many years ago. I think that's largely been forgotten and in large ways forgiven as far as Ortiz goes. And as time goes on, I think all Hall of Fame candidates who've had those associations are going to be dealt with a little more sympathetically than the Barry Bonds and the Roger Clemens of the world have. I think Ortiz will be one of the breakthrough kind of Hall of Fame guys, both on the DH side and the PED side, and I think he's deserving. You can't tell the story of baseball without talking about the Boston Red Sox of the last 15 years. You can't tell the story of the Boston Red Sox without telling the story of David Ortiz. That, in my mind, is what a Hall of Famer is.
And finally, as we head into the month of August, who do you think will be in the World Series at the end of October?
I'm going to stand by my pick from the beginning of the season just because one of them is still a pretty decent pick. I picked the San Francisco Giants to win it. I know they've been faltering. I know the Dodgers are catching up on them, but I think they're a very complete team. They're playing their worst baseball right now, and ultimately I think they might be the strongest team in the National League, even with the Cubs move. It's going to be a very, very interesting playoff if those two meet. In the American League, I picked the Red Sox at the beginning of the year, maybe not looking quite as great as they did months ago, but hey, stand by your guns. They've surprised before. They didn't look like a World Series winner many times in 2013. We'll see how they do now.
Well, we hope that American League pick at least pans out here in this neck of the woods. Craig, great information as always. We really appreciate the time, and we look forward to continuing to look at Hardball Talk and reading your stuff.
Thank you very much.